How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today I have with me Tyler Hill back on the channel from popular demand. He's been on here several times talking about the crypto market, talking about Solana. I'll leave links to him underneath the video where you can go follow him. Also, he does talk about other cryptos besides Solana, so definitely go follow his channel. We're going to get into some price predictions. We're going to get into how much Solana you actually need to make a difference in your financial goals. And also, we're going to look at the overall crypto market. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be back. It's weird. Last time we collabed was in Dubai. Now we're back across the screens from each other. So,
yeah, it seems like it was just like a couple days ago, but it's been a couple weeks by now. So we need to get you back on the channel. By the way, if you do want to trade Solana, there is a link underneath the video to Margex where you can trade Solana without KYC. So people don't need to know exactly how much Solana you have, but let's get into it. So Tyler, what do you think about the overall crypto market right now?
I think honestly, I think we're in a good spot. I know it's been boring realistically, and I would say that's kind of the general feeling that I've had about the market right now. And I was actually going to open up a chart, but I feel like it'd be easily conveyed here. Just, where we are right now within the market is that, again, not much is happening. But what's good about it is in the sense that that is the better of two certain situations. So after you see a market pull upwards, like we've seen, right, you are for sure going to see one of two things happen. You're either going to see it crash or you're going to see it slow down. That's really the only two options. It is impossible for any asset class to continuously go up consistently without ever slowing down, without ever pulling back. It's literally impossible, right? As long as there's supply and as long as there's demand, there will be moments in which it cools down and we see pullbacks, and that's just normal. And so what I tell people all the times whenever we have these extended phases of boringness, I'm looking at it now, we're 8 weeks in, 9 weeks in now, not really much happening, and people are screaming, oh, the market's dead and all these crazy things. But realistically, at the end of the day, this is the better of two certain situations. And so because of this, the way that I see it is that, okay, we're in a moment where it's cooling down. Maybe this is a time where you focus on your education. Maybe this is a time where you focus on learning new skills, where you focus on things that'll help you in the moments where the market is rallying. I think this is also a situation in which we're allowing the bulls to cool down. And I think we're seeing, although, sell pressure is still somewhat relevant, right? Not as much as of recent, of course, grayscale slowing down, but there is still some sell pressure, but not nearly as much buy pressure. And the fact that we're still seeing the market stabilize to some degree, it goes to show me that when the bulls do want to step back in, they would have had enough time to rest and cool down, and that will give enough momentum and energy to continue to run at some point. So I think this is a great phase of the market, and it kind of is a nice little take a breath moment from the craziness from this year. So
yeah, definitely. Now, did you want to hit on Bitcoin before we go into Solana? Do you want to show that chart or go straight into it?
Yeah, let's push into it. Just a little quick one, Just we always got to check out Bitcoin. A little cheeky one there, like Connor would say. I hate Connor's guts. Anyway, okay, so let's get into this. So looking at Bitcoin here, what we can see, very simple, very easy in my opinion. Bitcoin had put in it's gone through its cycles, right? So cycle number one that we will generally see from Bitcoin is, of course, the rally. Cycle number two is the slowdown. Cycle number three is the downtrend. Cycle number four is the sideways movement out of that downtrend. And cycle number five is the continuation upwards. We see that 5-step process consistently for Bitcoin in bull markets, not in general, but in bull markets. And so what we can see here is, again, we had step one, step two, step three. It seems to me as if we're probably going into step four pretty soon here, where it doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin's going to stop going down, right? We could see Bitcoin continue to go down. That is a possibility, but it's just to go to show that I think that the worst of it could easily be behind us. And I would say we're surely past 50% of this correction. I don't anticipate we're going to see Bitcoin head straight down to like 30,000. I just don't see that happening. Now, don't get me wrong. I can be wrong, and I've been wrong before. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. So personally speaking, knowing that summertime in itself is generally more boring, not as bearish as people make it out, it's more just boring. I think that we're probably going to see a little bit more sideways movement continuing on into the early summer. And so for me with Bitcoin, where we are right now, I think that we're stepping into step four rather soon, which is looking like it, maybe the steepness of this declining, right? Not as steep, but it easily could continue maybe a little bit more downwards or just sideways up until the point in which we do want to look for continuation. Very similar to what we've seen in these moments here. Like I can go back to find let's just do this, for example, right? We had step one, which is the pump, step two, which is the sideways movement, step three, then we go into step four, which is this little breakout, this little sideways moment here, then boom, we continue upwards. And as you can see, it happens literally every single time we do this. It happens over and over and over again, just the different scales. And so it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if we see something like this, like this, like this, like that. Continuation, just like we pretty consistently see. So yeah, I think we're in a good spot for Bitcoin, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. And that drives the market. So I guess getting over to the question at hand, since you are the Solana help desk, since you are the Solana analyst, let's look at that, because a lot of people will be wondering where Solana is going, like right away. I guess we can look at that, and then end of cycle.
Yeah, surely. Okay. So kind of looking at Solana here, what I have been saying is that what happens in the short term, I genuinely don't know. Like there's just, I cannot tell. And the reason that I can't tell is because we're in an interesting moment that I've seen from Solana several times throughout the last 4 to 5 years. Okay. So what we can see from Solana right now is that it actually just made one of the most important moves that it could have possibly made. I don't want to say necessarily ever, because ever is really dramatic, but definitely one of the most important ever. Now, the way that I go ahead and kind of just reflect this is that we obviously had the previous all-time high. We had that bear market low. Everybody screaming, everything, Solana's dead, blah, 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 blah. Then the market rallies, right? Now, whenever you're going in to retrace some of this drop, right, you're obviously going to have these things called Fibonacci retracement zones, which are basically just levels. Say when the price of a crypto falls, you're going to start retracing that fall, going back upwards. There are certain levels that you're going to run into here that are going to act as resistance zones, basically. They're going to be the zones where the bears are the most likely to step in and try to push the price back down. Now, I don't look at any Fibonacci retracement zones except for the 618 to 786 zones. Those are the only two I care about personally. And what you can see here is that the 618 to 786 zone was easy work for Solana. This is the zone that is the most likely to force a crypto's price back to the downside. Not only just a small rejection, oftentimes whenever you see continual rejections that end up leading to lower macro lows, they come off of this zone. And so knowing how strong this was supposed to be, it was supposed to be a problem. It was supposed to be a task. And what you can see, it was easy, right? We came up, we got a little bit of resistance, broke back above it, a little bit more resistance, continued into this for a couple months, and then eventually did break to the upside of that. And now we're just back testing it right now. That's all that's happening. Right now, I mean, this thing could go as low as $68, and I genuinely would not care. Because all we're doing is retesting a level that served as one of the strongest point of resistance that Solana should have ever seen. And so in the short term, sure, we may continue downwards at 68. We might hold right here. We might immediately use the support to continue upwards. There's really no way of telling in the immediate short term. But in the mid to long term, what I can say is now that Solana has broken the 786 level, which is identified by $126, the door for a continuation back up to that all-time high is wide open. And no matter what it does in the short term, as long as fundamentally it stays the same, I genuinely believe we're going to see Solana smash through the all-time high like it's done on every single time frame that Solana has made this exact move through. So for me, general opinion, I think we're smashing through the all-time high at some given point. What happens through this little next few weeks, next few months, don't know, but personally really don't care, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry for the Alexa alarm going off in the background.
I didn't hear it.
Okay. So that is interesting that you're showing that, what was it, the 786, right where we bounced off of it. And that's about the same price or the same day that we saw HGAlgo flash a buy signal as well. So, you know, maybe if you don't understand all this stuff, maybe you want to be paying attention to what HGAlgo is doing. There's a link to that underneath the video too, but yeah, pretty spot on the money there with those two last DCA signals on the daily. Actually, the last 5 are all fantastic.
All
but
of them.
Yeah, great timing there. But moving forward, let's say, you know, we get out of this range, we continue in this bull market, Bitcoin continues going up. Maybe a year from now, where do you see Solana at? Obviously, you know, it could be quite explosive comparatively to Bitcoin. It has been so far. Do you think that continues? That outperformance continues?
I definitely think it's a possibility. You know, I think the majority of the outperformance is behind us. That's my overall thoughts. I think that it was severely underperforming, and then it, in, you know, comparison, quote unquote, if you're a Bitcoin maxi, especially, severely outperformed Bitcoin to get back to where it is, right? Mm-hmm. This is the reason why November, December of 2022, I was just screaming, like, now is risky. There's a chance that this thing is absolutely done for if FTX does get worse. But at the end of the day, there's no better opportunity than right now. And that's where we are. So personally, do I think that we're going to see Solana consistently outperforming Bitcoin explosively like it has been? No, I really don't. But I do think that we're going to see Solana continue to outperform Bitcoin. And let me explain why. So my general thesis for Bitcoin is that Bitcoin's not going to go as high as people think it is. And that's not going to fare well with some people. And I do want to make it clear, Bitcoin is 60% of my entire crypto portfolio. So although, you know, or maybe it's like 58% now, but whatever. Although, yes, I am a Bitcoin fundamentalist. I understand it, right? And traditionally, I own more than that than anything else. At the end of the day, I don't think that Bitcoin's going to go as high as people think. I think we're likely to see Bitcoin cap out under $150,000. I just don't think we're going to go much higher than that. Do I have much of a objective reasoning, right? Is my thesis based off of pure data? No, it's just my feeling. And I've kind of relied on my feelings a lot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But with that in mind, and knowing that realistically looking at Bitcoin, we might have another doubling from here, right? Maybe like a 2.1, 2.2x. I think that if you just take it from that premise, right? I think Solana smashes through. A 2.2x from here is what, roughly $330, $350, something like that. I think we smashed through 350. I think that's easy. And so clearly, if I think we're going further than that, then obviously Solana does outperform Bitcoin in the macro sense. Now, in terms of where I think it's going, my price prediction does still remain the same at $674. I think that that's that's my primary focus, my primary target. And the reason that I say that is purely just what we see from the Fibonacci. You know, people try to overcomplicate things. They try to add these factors. They say, well, this happened and FTX that and this, that. And what people have come to realize is that oftentimes these factors and these variables that people try to introduce become nothing burgers. Well, FTX is going to be selling all of their Solana this time, so it's going to cause sell pressure that's going to stop the pump. And then Pantera Capital comes around and just buys at OTC $200 million of it. And then that was a nothing burger. It had no effect whatsoever on what's happening. Now, they do still have some Solana, I understand that. But at the end of the day, if people don't think that that's going to be sold OTC, they're not looking at this correctly. And so because of that, my genuinely belief is that based off of the Fibonacci's, based off of what we have seen historically for Solana time and time and time again, that we're going to see a Fibonacci extension up to the 1.272 zone, maybe a little bit under it, right? We have a history of not getting exactly up to things, maybe just a little under because people try to short it a little, or like they try to front run that move a little bit. And so I think maybe, $630, $600, somewhere in that is where we're going. And so that is still a pretty solid move from here. I think that's roughly a 4x-ish. So yeah, that's my general thoughts of where we're going with this thing.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would be happy with that. Maybe not the 10x that people think is going to come for Solana from here, but there are always people that have to be more bullish than what actually happens to even out the people that sell a little bit early as well. So I think it makes sense. Let's say someone's trying to accumulate now. Maybe they've been buying since the bear market. Of course, everyone's situation is different. Everyone has different goals. Everyone has a different net worth and income. Yeah. But what do you think would be a significant amount of Solana that maybe changes someone's life? Let's say they're just making like the average US salary. They're able to save, a couple $100, maybe $500 a month, but only some gets into crypto. What do you think is a good goal?
Sure. So, I mean, if I kind of base it, and obviously the thesis that I'm about to present is purely just brainstorming idea based, right? Yeah. But in my opinion, right? So if you're looking, if your whole metric of it is kind of just saying, okay, if we just take a normal person in the US, right? Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, the people in the US are in a little bit more of a privileged position financially than the majority of the world, right? And there are obviously some countries that are way better off, but I think that if you take an average person in the US, that's obviously better than, that maybe like the average financial wage or whatever it may be in somewhere like the Philippines or whatever it may be, right? So if we take somebody in the US and we say their salary is roughly $60,000, let's just $5,000 a month. I think that's a good number. I think it's maybe gone up a little bit since then, but this is not my field of expertise. But what I would say is, okay, what would be like a life-changing amount, right? Like what would be not necessarily a life-changing amount or a life-changing amount, but more of just like, okay, this would be absolutely huge and impactful. And the way that I see it personally is like, okay, well, if I was to get paid 50% of my yearly salary from an investment that I made, I would be very happy about that, right? Like that would be pretty life-changing. You gotta imagine if your boss came to you and said, hey, all of the money that you made this year, the 60,000 you made, we're going to give you another 50% for every dollar you made. I think everyone would celebrate that. So that's going to be the number I base it off of, which in that case would be $30,000. So to be able to get up to say $30,000 of a position of Solana based off of say a $600 strike price for Solana, roughly, that puts you at, what's that, about 50? Mm-hmm. About 50 Solana roughly, just depending on whatever the price does end up. And so I would say that would be maybe the target number. Now, obviously, that's not an easy number to accumulate, right? If we're looking at a $50 Solana or $150 Solana right now, 50 of those are going to cost, I believe, $7,500. So that's not, somewhere around there. So that's not necessarily an easy goal to aim for. But at the end of the day, what I've come to realize is that if I set goals that are really high, I end up finding a lot more success than if I set goals that are really low that I can accomplish, right? And so, in my opinion, I would go ahead and say 50 Solana would be a good, even, hold number for people to be able to look for, which obviously could then lead to pretty huge financial impact.
Yeah, makes sense. Appreciate you giving those numbers. And just for everyone that's at home, you know, maybe you've come into the cycle recently. You have to remember Solana was $8 or $9. Even if you bought it when it was 100% up and you bought 50 Solana, okay, that's $1,000 instead of now 7,500. So if you dollar cost averaged from $10 or even $20 down to $10 and then back up, like it might have just been a couple $1,000s, which is still a lot for a lot of people, but that's much more achievable. Just like when you look at Bitcoin and you think about trying to dollar cost average to a full Bitcoin when it's $100,000, that's much more difficult than throughout a bear market when everyone's bored, but you can buy it every day of the week for $20,000 per Bitcoin. So if you're coming a little bit late to the cycle, you know, you can still take advantage of the price appreciation, but I think I've heard this before. The first cycle, you lose money in crypto. The second cycle, you make some money in crypto. The third cycle is when you make a lot of money in crypto. And I think that's pretty much right on. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I'll talk a little bit less next time. I think I expanded a little bit too much, but
no, it's okay.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. We'll leave links to your channel underneath the video. Definitely go check him out. He gives a lot of good technical analysis, some fundamental analysis as well on a bunch of different cryptos, mostly Solana, but then also
every day,
and some top news. So check him out. Again, you can check out the links to Margex underneath the video. If you want to buy spot cryptocurrency, but you don't want people to know how much spot you buy, there's a non-KYC exchange underneath the video, which means that you don't have to put in your personal information. It's called CoinW. You can just go buy spot Solana or spot Bitcoin. You can withdraw it without ever having to put in your social security number or your name. So definitely check that out. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.
See you, everybody.